I'm clearing out all my research, diet research, chemical poisoning research, and throwing them out because I've been putting everything up on YouTube because I don't have that much time left. I've been very ill and I've got migraine and I'm weak and the nerve damage has just gotten worse. But I came across a story, a true story, and it's regarding Nazis and Health Canada. Now this happened in 1994. And I knew this gentle soul, a German expatriate, from 1986 to 1995. Well, actually 1994. And it was not until he was dying that he told me this story. And at the time, I didn't realize he was dying. I knew he took a heart attack. But on my word of honor, I promised to never reveal his name. He called me and he told me to get over to his shop after hours. He didn't want his wife or his children to hear. But he knew that he was dying. And he said that to me. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, but I'm a true story. And I said, well, you don't have to worry about my remembering your name. I got so much brain damage. I said, a month from now, I won't remember your name. And that happens to be true. It wasn't until much later that I was able to reverse my memory loss. And it's how I discovered that canola oil was one of the major reasons for my crippling attacks when I was 6 years old in 1947. But this is a story on how the Nazis infiltrated Health Canada, and Health Canada is a fascist regime, still very active. And as a young man, he worked in a lab and made some discoveries. He had no choice. His father was dead, and he had 5 sisters to take care of and a mother. And anyway, what could a 13-year-old boy do? But he certainly never supported the Nazis. And that's why he left Germany and came to Canada when he could. But I also promised him that if I ever got well enough to track and research and find the evidence that rapeseed alias canola oil is toxic and get it published, I would. Well, I did do that decades later. And I also sent everything I had to Israel, to an organization in Israel. And I also gave it to an organization in New York. And they confirmed that these Nazis and his story was true. But I couldn't get anyone else in Canada interested. They didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But the Jewish organization in New York did cover it. It wound up in a story on 60 Minutes. And I have completed everything he asked me to do. I got the copies of the scientific documents that proves that everything that dear sweet dying man told me. And these documents came from an American library that no longer exists, but a source from which a woman who, when she tried to go public, became under attack by a neo-Nazi group in Seattle, Washington, and she since died. Now, I have neither the means nor the tech know-how to save and upload all into a safe cloud for posterity. So what I have been doing is I've put all my diet research onto YouTube, my story, my biography onto YouTube. I do have websites, but when I die, everything's going to disappear and Facebook will disappear. And I have all the evidence also on Google Docs in Google Drive. But unless some hacker knows how to get in there, that's all going to disappear. Now, this is going to take a very long time because it's many pages, this story. And it is not that I disbelieved him at the time. It's just that I was so sick I couldn't understand what he was saying to me. Sorry, I'm going to lose my, I forgot to put the energy saver on here. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not feeling very good, so you'll just have to bear with me. Okay, oh God, these hackers. I'm getting something called Vox.com. It keeps threatening me that my computer's going to die if I don't do this and I don't do that. No, such bullshit. Anyway, the facts speak for themselves, most of which governments and millions of people all over the world knew as far back as 1933. But I didn't know. I'm a Canadian, and none of this information was ever available in Canada because Health Canada cover-ups. 1986 to 1905, I'll just call him Hans. It was in May, and Hans over the years had told me many stories, but this one in particular he was horrified because he suddenly realized that it was canola oil that had been poisoning me all along. And he'd seen me take attacks, and any time I ate in his restaurant, I never took an attack, but every time I bought a product or ate somewhere else, I took an attack. And he finally pieced it together that it was canola oil, because it's in everything in Canada, and it's not on the label. We don't have right to know legislation in Canada, and this is 2019. But I have to tell you that regardless that he told me this story, I did not know the full extent until I was 70 years old, which was only 7 years ago. He said that these were war criminals, and they were brought into Canada, and he knew of several that were right in our district where we lived. When I flew to New York in May 1989 in a desperate bid to finish my research into cheminosis, any disease caused by chemicals, and later the neurologist in New York had me change the name to Parkinsonism. Prior to my meeting with several scientists who shall remain anonymous, a bargain I made to get the information that otherwise no one would give me, I also contacted a Zionist organization in New York, telling them what Hans had told me. And sometime later, this did become a story and was proven by a young Jewish journalist who did a documentary, and part of it was aired on 60 Minutes. Over 100 had all been given government jobs in Canada, never even bothered to change their names. They were that safe. And this journalist was amazed at how easy they were to be found. All had been listed in any phone book in their real names. All were in low-paying jobs except for those in Health Canada. He couldn't get any information on that. But they lived in very wealthy districts and contributed nothing to our society. So obviously, they came with a lot of Jewish money, no doubt, victims' money. Hans told me that these men were horrible sociopathic men who enjoyed killing and participated in the monstrous killing of thousands of Jews, of course, but also killed thousands of German people, or actually we should say millions, Germans who might have been handicapped or considered not worth keeping alive. They got the same treatment. Or any German who ever spoke out against the Nazis. They were also killed. That was part of the Nazi regime. When I returned from New York, Hans was delighted I had managed to get a hold of someone in New York at both the Zionist organization as well as a neurologist who helped me to identify the name of my disease as Parkinsonism. It was given many names over the decades, 20th century disease, allergies, chemical hypersensitivities. You can call it what you will, but a poison is a poison is a poison. And I also had the help of a biochemist who was Japanese to prove my theory that my disease was in my brain. When poisoned, it became dysfunctional and it shut down the signals to my body from the waist down. Well, actually, from the head down to my toes as time went on, which is why I lost memory and my physical functionability was severely impaired. And looking back, it may not seem like much, but it was an important piece of the mystery into all diseases caused by toxic chemicals, air, food, and water. Considering I was terminal in a bubble gas mask at the time and I could now manage a small MSA gas mask, frankly, I was personally quite thrilled because I was out of the bubble. I'm still allergic to the planet and I still have to wear a gas mask, but there are areas where I can breathe. Air conditioning is one area, like depending. And, there have been some improvement in seniors clubs so that I was able to make an effort to get back into mainstream society somehow. And it made me more mobile, and I used my mobility to try to share with as many people as I could the knowledge that I had discovered. So I shared it with the, and I had a great deal of help from MSA head office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with various gas masks. My most recent one is the Advantage, which is much lighter and lasts a really long time. It's just amazing. And later that same year in 1989, I gave all I had to the United Steelworkers Union, the American vice president visiting in Sudbury. And he promised that he would get help for the miners, and he kept that promise. I had a number of brief periods of total recovery, and I literally went from death to dancing and crippled to skiing, and I was bloody gorgeous, unbelievably gorgeous. In 1991, using my little gas mask, I was rebuilding my damaged leg muscles, and I thought I'd made it. And in 1993, I had beautiful photographs taken of me to show off my success. Well, that was short-lived. And suddenly in 1994, I took a very serious terminal attack from which I just could not recover. Constantly on crutches in the agony of excruciating pain and infection spreading like a prairie on fire, everything was shutting down, and my immune deficiencies was like living with AIDS without any medical help. And I frankly just wanted to die. And Hans and I had coffee together almost every day, and it was painful for him to see me deteriorate as it was for me to live it. On that day that he called me, rain was pouring down, pounding on my windows when I got this urgent call from Hans to come right over immediately. We must talk, he said. When I arrived, there was a big pot of decaf coffee on the stove, and on crutches he helped me to sit down at the kitchen table. His behavior was very nervous, even shaking. He was that upset. Trudi, I know what caused your disease. My God, I don't know why I didn't see it sooner. You were poisoned from that Nazi shit, Canola. You began to get sick in 1947 at 6 years of age. That shit came to Canada with the Nazis by then. You've been systemically poisoned all your life. Those bastards in government, Health Canada, they knew it all along. I sat frozen listening to this horror story. Much of it took years to fully sink in. It just didn't register at the time. He said there's no such thing as a canola plant. It's a patented name by Monsanto and the corrupt fascist pigs at Health Canada. changed its name to hide its real name as rape, R-A-P-E, rape. Rape is a weed, a toxic weed that many countries like China and others use, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy nor is it safe to use. China has billions of people, so why should they care that people die from it? It's particularly dangerous to children. If you grow up as a child without it and you get on it maybe later as an adult, you can tolerate a certain amount, just as you can tolerate a certain amount of arsenic. But that doesn't make it okay. Denmark used it too, but they were infiltrated by the Nazis and too many other countries to count. And he said Canada is the worst. They gave it a name to hide what it really is. It means Canada oil. There was a dictionary of toxic food and chemical additives that you've been using, Trudi, and what good is it to you if under the name canola there is nothing, and you don't know that you need to read the real name and look up under R to find its history. In fact, in today's world, you won't even find it. I've checked. It's all disappeared. The Nazis first discovered rapeseed oil, Hans said, in North Africa when they ran out of diesel fuel. They used rapeseed oil to run their tanks. I worked with those murdering pigs as a boy in one of their labs where they were doing experiments with rapeseed oil. First as a fuel because it would grow anywhere. It's a damn weed. It will grow in a swamp. Or even in a desert. Rape grows so fast, very cheap, and will yield 3 times the oil per seed than corn. But it is poison. That Nazi shit is poison, he said. It doesn't kill quick. No, it is worse. It kills you slowly over decades. Look what it did to you in your life. And it will do that to millions of children around the world. You must research, my dear. You must find the proof and try to get it published to expose it. That is your mission in life. I see it all now. Trudi, listen to me. I'm dying. I know that, but God is my witness. It never dawned on me until today that it was canola all along. And yes, there's many other toxic chemicals that will cause your disease, but in particular, canola is one of the most insidious because it's not being registered as a toxic chemical. I was just a boy with 5 sisters and a mother to feed. My mother had been forced to be a soldier in a war he never believed in. If he had refused, we would have all been butchered and killed. Never mind that. You must live. You understand, Trudi? You must never promise me you'll never give up. And he went on to tell me so much more. Then we both burst into tears and hugged. I never saw Hans again. He died with a heart attack in his sleep. Looking back, it all seems so obvious. I never got sick when I ate at his house because that Nazi shit was not in his food. I never got sick in Toronto when I ate with my Jewish or Muslim or Greek or Italian or Hindus or Africans clients because they never used that Nazi shit in their food. But I always got sick eating Canadian food and in Canadian restaurants, except in a little village, Capriol, where they don't use canola. I never got sick in New York anywhere either, because what I didn't know is it was banned when I was there, and it stayed banned until 1994. And in 2005, I took another fatal attack. I called a science writer, Glenn, in Washington, D.C., begging him to take what little research I had because it was clear I would never live to publish it myself. He accepted, of course, but then said, "Are you still eating Canadian food?" And I said, "Geez, I live in Canada. I don't understand the question." He said, "I just assumed you knew." And I said, "Knew what?" "Trudi, you have no right to know legislation in Canada. Canola oil is in all your food and does not have to be identified on the label. You have to boycott all Canadian food. Listen, I don't have much time. I'm on my way to France. I'm moving there. Mail your stuff to me and I promise to arrange to have it forwarded. Boycott Canadian food. You'll make it. I just know you will make it." Well, I did, but it took me from 2005 to 2011. and it was brutal torture. And then I had to relearn how to write, how to make a sentence. My brain damage was so extensive and to be cured. Ochre was keeping me alive, and ochre was restoring my ability to have memory so that I could relearn. But I kept getting poisoned, and I never knew why. So then later I discovered there were many other toxic chemicals, and I'm not going to go into that long list. It's not worth it. This isn't what this story is about. It's about Nazis at Health Canada. Then I had to create a website to be able to get all my diet for disease research out in the world. That took another brutal, agonizing 2 years. And now the final stage in my quest to save children from a fate worse than death, for in living with dying, there is no worse fate for any child like me can endure. Death would be a welcome relief. My final work was to keep my promise to Hans and all those children in Wasaga Beach who helped me to survive, especially my heroes, Timmy and Jason. And for my son Jeffrey that I lost after he was born, forced to give him up for adoption with a mother's true love, to free him from my abusive family, to free him from my disease. It is for them I write in the final stages of my quest. What I know now about Canadian Nazis and rapeseed oil alias canola oil, and those Nazi pigs, fascists at Health Canada. A while back, a person from an American library sent me a package in the mail and copies of scientific evidence that rapeseed alias canola, as far back as 1951, was known to contain naturally high toxic chemicals, 3 in particular: uric acid, ERUCIC acid, nitriles, and tannins. 1979 veterinary medicine clearly documented research that rape seed oil poisoned animals. Rape alias canola was banned in the US and most of Europe until 1994 because of that fact. Unfortunately, I was never well enough to do anything with these documents. A woman typed up a synopsis for me, which frankly was so scientific I couldn't decipher it. It meant nothing to me. So I sent it out to various scientists around the world, from here to England and Israel. And they never did anything with it that I know of. And then I did later send information directly to the hospital of Dr. Oz to please do not promote canola oil. And as far as I know, he stopped promoting it. I kept everything hoping to pass this along to a scientific journalist that would expose the truth, but that never happened. There was a time when the National Enquirer would have leaped at the chance to publish the story, but that was a long since past. Now all they care about is celebrities, because that's where the money is. Little people don't make money, and we don't make the news very much. Certainly I can't. Neither Hans nor myself ever realized that there were no human rights laws in Canada on food labels. Had he known that, I would have boycotted all Canadian food and saved myself more grief and physical damage. But I didn't know. And to the best of my recollection are the facts of what Hans told me, most of which I've since confirmed. Some, of course, are beyond my ability to do that, but with so many highly skilled tech geeks on the planet, obviously someone can do it. Hans died 3 weeks after telling me the last story on Canadian Nazi collaboration in Health Canada. He knew he was dying with chronic heart disease that he personally attributed to his having worked in that lab with rapeseed oil on a daily basis. He told me the Nazis had come up with the idea that if rapeseed oil was put into food, it acted as a preservative, much like embalming fluid, and gave food a 2-year shelf life. When they tested larger doses on women, men, and children, they did not die quickly, but lived for years with the very same symptoms I have always had since my first attack at the age of 7. I'm now 77. Their demonic plan was to get it approved first in Canada, using it as a backdoor to get into the US with FDA approval. It would spread rapidly all over the world. Doctors would not be able to diagnose the cause of victims' chronic illnesses. They would eventually get severe immune deficiencies and metabolic breakdown, which in itself would lead to other diseases invading their bodies. After decades of chronic illnesses, doctors would misdiagnose MS, Parkinson's, Parkinsonism, Alzheimer's, and cancer, and the cause may have been, in fact, canola oil, but they would never be able to link it, nor would it ever be detected. Hans went on to describe a plan so horrible it was almost completely unbelievable. As a direct consequence of having canola oil approved by the FDA, it was their plan that once the doctors worldwide would misdiagnose and then prescribe drugs of a wide variety to combat the multiple symptoms, put the vast majority of society into a state of legal drug addicts. The money these Nazi maniacs envisioned that they would make would stagger your imagination. Not millions, not billions, but trillions. And yes, today that's all come to pass. Everything he told me in 1994, 2019, it's all true and it's all come to pass. That's exactly what's happened. Such is the greed of such men. And there are even good men now that call themselves Christians. I won't mention any names, but they support Monsanto. And they bought stocks in Monsanto and in Bayer. And he's on the Shark Tank. And his thinking is just as bad as the Nazis, because he is such a capitalist pig that there's nothing left of humanity in that man. And I despise him. And what's worse is that he's so arrogant that he doesn't even recognize the evil that he really is. And he's one of the good guys. Today I know that this horrific story is true. My own personal experience was as I became a legal drug addict at 24, addicted to antibiotics to combat the infections, addicted to pain meds to combat the chronic pain. There were many other medications prescribed. Then in 1984, I just flat out refused to take them. I was terminal, lost everything and everyone I ever loved. 1986, a doctor forced me to use a so-called allergy pill daily, and I became addicted to it, and it caused anaphylactic shock and toxic shock syndrome. And I put that story in my biography, and I'm not going to go into it. It doesn't matter. I escaped his clutches. With the help of 2 dead men. That's right. I'm not going to talk about that here. And since then, I have been on no prescription drugs of any kind, except in the case of an emergency, and I've managed to stay off. I use garlic pills and natural foods and herbs and other ways to combat my immune deficiencies and flus and infections and viruses. But it has never been simple. And it certainly won't be simple for anyone with my disease. Rape alias canola causes so much damage that to each victim, it may not even be possible to recover. I simply don't know. I do know, however, that it is entirely avoidable, unless you are a Canadian with less human rights than a stray dog. We are the only country that has no right to know legislation on food labels. And finally, you develop numerous other diseases as a consequence of the side effects of having been systemically poisoned. That, including other toxic chemicals, create a multitude array, a cascading effect. As your immune system shuts down, you develop other diseases. The media did mention that uric acid in rapeseed oil was toxic. But other than that, they never mentioned any of the others, and they certainly didn't mention that it's still in canola oil, even though it claimed not to be. Now, 2001, every scientific document in veterinary medicine clearly stated these chemicals cause brain dysfunction, liver damage, and too many other chronic crippling symptoms to list, including metabolic breakdown, immune deficiencies, memory loss, crippling, and it makes you then vulnerable to viruses and bacteria that invade, causing serious side effects leading to slow and painful death. So you'll never get diagnosed with Parkinsonism. Fact 1. Canola is a patented name meaning Canada oil to disguise its sources from rape, R-A-P-E, seed. Hans said that it was the Nazis founded chemical warfare company Monsanto that holds the patent. This is a proven fact, well documented, and that is even on the internet. Hans also said that Monsanto was engaged in Germany in World War I in developing the mustard gas that murdered men by burning up their lungs and skin so deep that those who survived had to be placed in oil vats for the rest of their lives. I know some of these men existed because I used to go to Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto and read to them on Sundays from 1962 until the last of them died. I just remember him thanking me for taking the time, and the hospital administrator coming over and shaking my hand and thanking me, because he said they'd been completely abandoned, and people said that they couldn't bear to see their suffering. I'll never get over that statement. I said, they won't come and read to them and keep them company because they can't bear to see them suffering? How sick is that? I was glad to do it. And I did it on the suggestion of Rabbi Plout, with whom I used to help out with typing on weekends at the Holy Blossom Temple. And no, I'm not Jewish. I practice no particular religion on this planet. And I don't pray to anything born on the planet. I am strictly prejudiced, and I refuse to get involved in any religion, you might say, that is against spiritual beliefs. I only try to connect to God of the universe, the creator of the universe. And if it didn't create the universe, I'm not interested in talking to it. That's my position. Apparently, no one was willing to go to read to these people who were suffering. Hans also said that Monsanto was responsible for the Agent Orange that burned people alive and everything in its path in Vietnam. Also insidious was their DDT pesticides. And we know they spliced pesticides right into the food, so that we're eating pesticides whether we like it or not. 1990, their despicable inventions was chemical warfare and the Gulf War, which damaged the brains and mental ability of hundreds of thousands of our military, most of whom are not being treated properly, and certainly not in Canada. And their worst invention was the genetically modified plant seeds, which contain the pesticides already in the plant, claiming it'll do no harm to people, just kills the insects. And it kills rats, but not people. Oh, we're so dumb. I have a saying, the Nazis didn't lose the war, we did, because they've infiltrated our governments and our healthcare programs and our medicine worldwide. They're everywhere, and they own everything. They just got smart, and they work behind closed doors. But anyone who believes that these genetically modified plants don't do any harm are any dumber than I ever was, and believe me, I was pretty dumb. I was very naive. As of now, Monsanto, now Bayer, they had completely taken control of all Canadian agriculture universities and colleges where agriculture is on the agenda. And taxes and laws to stop small farmers, and what little human rights we had today are non-existent in Canada. We are completely controlled by a fascist regime. There is nothing democratic about the Canadian system, let me tell you. Han's last words to me were, Trudi, the Nazis didn't lose the war, we did. And he's right. Fact 2, Monsanto controls Health Canada, our agricultural industry, universities, and our medical industry. In 1994, the FDA lifted the ban on rapeseed alias canola, claiming they were genetically modified it so it was no longer toxic. Oh, sure. And if they created an oil from poison ivy and they said it was safe, would you believe that too? Yeah, you probably would. Well, with the help of our corruption and fascist Health Canada, even Dr. Oz, for a time, was duped into promoting this demonic Nazi product on his show. Fact 3. Rapeseed oil became part of our Canadian daily diet, hidden in all our food, and not listed on any label after World War II. 1989, a Consumer's Dictionary and Food Additives listed rapeseed oil as having been banned by the FDA due to its containing naturally toxic chemicals, namely uric acid. No mention of the tannins and nitriles as part of the science was successfully suppressed. Once the FDA ban was lifted in 1994, by 1995, this information was delisted. Yes, 1995, rapeseed oil was no longer listed. The listing under canola did not indicate any evidence that it had ever been toxic and that it was a byproduct of rapeseed. Fact 4. Canadian government corruption is lethal and a proven fact. They are fascist Nazi pigs, which even they cannot dispute. Uric acid in any amount over an extended period of time causes gout and arthritis. Farmers testified to me that they saw animals suffer from rapeseed as far back as 1930 in Europe and refused to use it no matter what the government said. One company told me they were forced by government inspectors to put it into their vegetarian product as a preservative. Yes, that company is in Vancouver, British Columbia. And the preservative is still there, and they're still putting it in. 1994, I was poisoned and became terminal because of that product. And an employee checked, and on their shipping labels in their product to the US, it clearly stated canola oil. But on the same Canadian product, it said nothing. When I sent out a press release to the media, which the media didn't publish, the company got scared and they did change their label in Canada. But not Loblaws. Loblaws won't. They've refused. Metro tried. Metro is a head office in Montreal. If you call them, they'll tell you everything, that all ingredients are in their products. It's not listed, but they'll tell you. You won't get that information from Loblaws. And why I did not boycott all Canadian food right then and there, my only excuse is that I got brain damage. It just didn't connect. If I saw a label, I boycotted everything that had no label, no information. But it never occurred to me to boycott companies that had everything listed. Now, there was one German company, Rudolph Bakery, and they changed their labeling based on the fact when I sent them this information. But I wasn't successful with Kellogg's and others. I didn't actually completely boycott 100% all restaurant food, my mother's food, your food, friends' food. Like, that's the only way I can control it until I was 70 years old. I just kept trusting when people said to me, it's okay, and I would try it, and I would eat it, and then I would take an attack. Including my mother. She poisoned me 10,000 times over. But I just never really understood that the corruption was in our having no human rights in Canada. Which means our government system itself is corrupt, and our legal system is corrupt, and our court system is corrupt, and it's totally criminal. Yes, it is. Fact 5. Bodybuilding industry is big business, and desiccated liver tablets made from cattle grazing in Brazil are not allowed to graze anywhere near rape, alias canola. Well, in 1989, that is what they were being told, and back then it may have been true. Today, knowing what I know about Brazil, that's hogwash. Fact 6. 1994, the FDA ban was lifted on Canada's Nazi product, canola oil. Some claim that they were paid to, but with the research I did, both President Bush and former Prime Minister Mulroney were instrumental in getting the ban lifted. And if you wish for more facts on their corruption, read the book On the Take by Stevie Cameron. It appears to suggest Mr. Mulroney received over 1 million shares in an American food distribution company that may or may not have been linked to guess who, Monsanto, no doubt. Because they have many subsidiary companies by other names, so you can't find them. Fact 7. 1994 to 2005, Health Canada had health inspectors force health food companies put canola in their products as a preservative. I know the names of some of these companies, but I choose not to disclose that information because they are not the real criminal. Health Canada is the criminal. What I can disclose is that Rudolph Bakery, as I mentioned earlier, of German descent, is the only company in Canada willing to follow German European law and list all ingredients and all chemical additives on the label. So there is the only product that's safe for me to eat. Now, since then, there's some other companies that are safe, but they're from the States. Furthermore, they explained to me that breads from which were from authentic sourdough cannot have any oil added. It will destroy the bacteria from which the sourdough was famous for. Authentic is the important word, warning that many companies use that word and then add oil pretending it is authentic, but it is not. They explained that the only safe word to look for is no oil added or zero fat, being the only law in Canada that you can rely on. Several Canadian companies have injured me terribly selling out, and then their product was safe, and then they sold out, and the takeover company changes the recipe, and it's happened to me four times in 6 weeks just this last spring. Fact 8. I was going to list the long, slow process of systemic poisoning that canola did to me and many other victims, but I've changed my mind. I think all you need to consider is that alias canola, hiding its poisonous name, is toxic and it lowers your immune system. And it causes digestive difficulties and you don't digest food properly and gastritis, and obviously you wind up with a multitude of side effects that make you vulnerable to cancer and many other diseases. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's is one of them. Numerous brain dysfunction, nerve disorders, autism. And canola is not the only toxin on the current lifestyle to cause all these effects. Chemical hypersensitivities are growing in our society as a direct result of the massive amount of chemicals in our air, food, water, and beverages. And that's a scientific fact. Fact 9. Science proved in 1930 that rapeseed oil, alias canola, is toxic, and it was scientifically documented in American Veterinary Medicine. There once existed thousands of scientific documents which today have disappeared from the USA libraries of source. I have about 100 copies, but unable to upload to a safe cloud. try and crash my computer. So what I did was I picked out what I considered to be the most important, and I put those up on my website, Google Docs, but I have no way to put that up here. It's not going to outlive me. I've done the best I can, but it's not going to outlive me. But the main toxic ingredients was well known since 1930. Now, the last time I ate canola, again, not by choice, it took me from 2005 to 2011 to undo the damage with my okra diet for disease control. Beware, there's nothing safe about canola oil, and victims are not so well documented. Fact 10, the main toxic chemical, uric acid in canola, naturally contributes to gout and arthritis. However, veterinary medicine showed evidence that nitriles and tannins are also in toxic amounts, and they cause various kinds of cancer from skin to blood. The pain to the animals, of course, could not be measured. The cries of agony made it clear that the pain was horrific. So said the scientists who documented and watched the animals' suffering that they tested it on. During extensive research, some animals died rather quickly while others survived with short-term apparent effects. Yet some long-term research confirmed animals displayed a wide array of chronic illnesses, such as hemolytic anemia, HAEMOLYTIC anemia, blindness, pulmonary emphysema, lung disease, digestive disturbances that led to metabolic breakdown. Death was slow and painful, and they suffered in agony. There was no evidence that rape alias canola could ever be safe for man or beast. There was no evidence that the newer product, genetically engineered canola oil, was safe for man or beast. Fact 11, Prevention Magazine, April 2012, case in point. Michael R. Taylor, the FDA Deputy Commissioner for Food, who oversees all the agency's food and nutrition programs, was once vice president for public policy at Monsanto, the biotech company that produced an estimated 90% of all the genetically modified seeds sold in the world, now called Bayer. Monsanto's position that there is no need for or value in testing the safety of GM products in humans. Sounds like Nazi fascism to me. And that's what it is. Fact 12, 2014. Health Canada still refused to give Canadians. No, 2019. Health Canada still refused to give Canadians same food labeling laws that existed in Europe and US for over 40 years. As a result, children are dying and no one cares. And getting my disease and not getting diagnosed and no one cares. And for those who survive as I did, they have their lives destroyed with the brutality and torturous disease that no doctor will ever diagnose correctly or be able to treat properly. Okra Diet for Disease Control was written to prevent children from getting Parkinsonism as a direct result of toxic chemicals, air, food, and water in beverages, and canola oil as it caused me, and further to gain human rights for all children and people with allergies in Canada, a country that is so corrupt, and a government that is basically fascist, gone mad with greed. There is no democracy here. Long-term effects confirmed, animals displayed I've already said that. Summation. Nazi and fascism is still thriving, and our government proves that. Health Canada, by the very fact that they continue to dupe medical professionals with claims that canola oil, aka rapeseed oil, is better than olive oil. In truth, butter is better. Hell, anything is better. However, if I buy an American or European product, at least I get a choice, as all ingredients, except for GMO, are listed on all food labels. As a Canadian, I am denied the right to not take an attack. I am denied the right to choose what I eat. So for me, I have to boycott Canadian food. I've tried to get the Legions and their seniors dancers to boycott canola oil, but I have not been successful. 34 years later and 22 years of fighting, and I'm not successful, so I've given up on that. I just don't eat, and I don't go to the dances where I'm required to pay for food that I can't eat. Toxic chemicals are in Canadian food, but there's no way for you to find out. As I said earlier, Metro is a company that make it a policy to answer those questions if you call. Not so with Loblaws and others. And Rudolph Bakery is still a family-owned company, and so far it's still safe. I'm alive, living with dying, suffering, always at risk of being poisoned. There are many fighting against GMO, but that is not by far the only problem we face in our food. Yes, rapeseed oil, alias canola oil, is toxic, but much more toxic to children from the age of inception. So if you're pregnant and you eat it, similar to alcohol, you're going to pass a predisposition of mutation of brain damage to your children. And in Canada, you have a choice because you don't know any better. It really should be banned, but it's not going to happen. I mean, look, Roundup has just recently been banned in the United States, and it's still not banned by Health Canada, and Canada probably never will be. Because, hey, they're fascist Nazi pigs. Polysorbate 80 in ice cream. And in dairy, if eaten, and then you take a multivitamin, which many children are now exposed to, changes the safe biochemistry of the multivitamin, and it becomes toxic. Yeah, the combination of polysorbate 80 and a multivitamin becomes toxic and can kill your children and cause disease and brain damage. And they're going to get diagnosed with some stupid disease like autism when they've been poisoned. What happens is that it allows the chemical to cross the blood-brain barrier in the brain, and the result is permanent brain damage, which in children are going to be diagnosed with any number of diseases such as autism, learning disabilities, and crippling, etc., or death, such as what happened to my cousin, little Regine. One attack and he died. He's found dead on the bedroom floor by his mother. And I've been living with these attacks since I'm 6 years old. God of the universe has kept me here. And this is why, so that I can share with you the truth. I took such an attack in March that caused me so much more brain damage, metabolic breakdown, crippling semi-catatonic attacks. I've been fighting it ever since to get back the health that I spent 22 years to develop. I got a tumor that did nerve damage and set me back 30 years. Every time I open my mouth and eat or breathe, basically I'm allergic to the planet. There's just not much that I can do at 78. Yeah, 78 next month. So because my time is very limited and it's running out, this is why I'm doing this. See my video on YouTube, Polysorbate 80 can kill you. Clindamycin can kill you. It killed my mother. I have over 200 videos with research and stories that will never get published, but they're there for posterity and historical purposes. For anyone that is interested, it's free. And do with it as you will. You're under no obligation to me. It is so insidious to put the lives of millions of children in jeopardy to suffer horrendous chronic illness diseases that could have easily been poisoned. I can only wonder whose child will be next. It's too late to ban or stop rapeseed oil, alias canola oil, genocide from spreading within my lifetime, or possibly any lifetime. The scientific evidence proving that canola oil is just as poisonous as its natural state rapeseed oil and caused the symptoms of my Parkinsonism to animals that ate it has been destroyed and no longer available, having been deleted from the library records in the United States. It never was available in Canada or Europe. And so it's been covered up by Health Canada's corruption and their fascism to this day, August 31st, 2019. Now, if you happen to be allergic to cantaloupe, as I am, and you genetically alter it with a green melon, which happened to me, because it doesn't look the color or smell like a cantaloupe, you eat it, and you darn near die, as I did. You eat a fish that's been genetically engineered, and you take an attack. I'm allergic to cod and to all sucker fish. I can eat rainbow or halibut, but I don't dare not touch halibut because it's the same color as cod and I can't trust it. So I stick with rainbow trout. I could eat salmon too, but I don't like it. So I like sardines. I eat a lot of sardines. You're better off with small fish. Fortunately, I realized within just the first mouthful of the cantaloupe and forced myself to throw up quick enough that I was only sick for several weeks. And of course, I didn't have to go to the hospital and I didn't die. The person who sent me all the copies of the science, she was attacked by a neo-Nazi group. They broke into her apartment, sprayed toxic poisoning everywhere, had all records and the apartment contents destroyed, and she was therefore forced to flee, spent 3 years in recovery, and became anonymous. And she has since died. I've copied everything on my free websites. Tragically, after 3 years of work, you can print and download and view everything that's on my websites. But there is a limited, I have a limit in what I can do with the new technology. The fact that I couldn't read or write in 1986, and it took me 22 years to make a sentence, and to be able to share this with you. I spent from 1995 until 2019 to be able to write so that I could be understood. I give permission infinitum to anyone, anywhere to publish all or part thereof, of any of my stories or anything you want. I don't care about anything. I don't care about fame and I don't care about money. My only purpose in living with dying, as I have done these 77 years, is to save children from the horror of living with dying. For in dying, there is no more dying. And chronic illness is a future so bleak that death would be a welcome relief. Now I sent everything out to every member of Parliament, coast to coast, in every province, coast to coast, both federal and provincial, to every health agency that I could get my hands on. And the only one that showed any concern to help me was the FDA. So I know there's a lot of people blasting FDA this and the FDA that, but I'm going to tell you, they're a hell of a lot more honest than any other agency you'll ever find in Canada. And I'm alive because FDA have helped me, and they helped me keep my mother alive for many years. So now I'm done. Yes, I'm done. Nazis and Health Canada. I began my quest at the age of 7 in 1947. I went into the adult libraries and I began to research, trying to understand the dysfunction that I endured and that I saw within my family and the people around me. All the evidence was available, except it was not available in Canada. Millions around the world knew the truth. Everyone but me, that is. The full story will always be incomplete. But Health Canada are murderers, Nazi fascist pigs. Canada's not a democracy. Never was and never will be. Now, Americans told me that in 1964 when I met Elizabeth Taylor, and she offered to help me, and I was so dumb. I told her what I had was genetic and there was nothing that could be done because that's what my doctor said, and I believed him. But he didn't know what he was talking about. He just made that up. Arrogant bastard. God bless Elizabeth Taylor. Boy, that was a moment in time. John Wayne, too, gave me a big hug when I was pregnant. I came in contact with some very, very powerful people who could have helped me. And I was just too dumb to know it. And now, I'm just nobody. I'm just a nobody that nobody cares about. So there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm putting it up there to the best I can. That's all the evidence, that's all the proof that you'll ever need. An American once said to me back in 1964, we get the government we deserve. Well, today I know what he meant. He tried to take me to New York. He wanted to get me out of Canada. He wanted to take care of me. And I said no. I really thought that I had to stay in Canada to fight for human rights. How stupid was I? No. It's my mistake. And because of my ignorance and naivete, millions of people and millions of children all over the planet are now suffering. Because I was too dumb to take their help when it was offered to me. Do you know that the vice president of Warner Books said to me, there's nothing wrong with my writing. It's just that I'm not famous enough to ever get published. And he explained to me what's happened with the internet. He said, every minute of every day, there's 1 billion people on the internet. And you got to find a way to make yourself known and make yourself go viral. Well, I said, what do? Take a shotgun and go into a Toronto Star and shoot up the ceiling to get publicity? He said, unfortunately, that's just about it. Well, I won't do that. I thought about it many times, but I won't do it. No. Violence only begets violence. I won't do it. Those of you who have or know of anyone who are suffering, please share my work. You will be amazed what okra and my diet for disease, my okra diet can do. Do you know that one drop at a time can make an ocean? So one person, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. We could fight them, but we have to do it together. And that's why I don't uphold with any particular religion or any particular political party. You're either connected to the universe and care about all species as a whole, not just animals and not just whales, that includes people, or it's not worth fighting for. This is all there is, and it's all free. And I'm asking you, please help me stop those Nazi fascist pigs at Health Canada from killing any more of our children and causing disease to any more children worldwide. And you can do that by sharing the truth. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I've done all I know how to do. God bless.